My name is Rutendo Matinyare. I'm standing in front of you today very proud to be wearing my regalia, Zimbabweans United Against US War Sanctions. I'm proud to be wearing this outfit today, particularly after SADC has said that the 25th of October shall be the day that SADC countries come together to fight against these sanctions that are on Zimbabwe. It is an honor for me to be wearing this outfit because it is because of the efforts of organizations like mine and thousands of others that are in Zimbabwe, those that are in Africa and SADC that have been fighting against these sanctions, that there's now a recognition by SADC and other Africans that the sanctions in Zimbabwe must end. There is a recognition that the sanctions in Zimbabwe are hurting the entire region and probably the entire continent, and therefore those sanctions must end, and we as Africans must unite to end those sanctions. More critically, there seems to be an understanding in Africa that neocolonialism and hegemony on the continent, which is what these sanctions are, they're a collective punishment on Zimbabweans to make an example of Zimbabwe, to discourage any other African country from taking its resources and its land to give its majority peoples. And it is because of this that the unity of Africans around this issue is great progress and shows us that we may unite as African people in our generation. Now, what hurts me the most is that Africa is uniting against these sanctions against Zimbabwe. But we as Zimbabweans ourselves have not yet united. It is totally unfair for us as Zimbabweans to expect Africa to stand with us when we, the Zimbabwean people, are not united against this fight against sanctions. It is also unfair for us to have African countries fighting against these sanctions. The South African president speaking against this sanction, the Tanzanian president speaking against these sanctions, the head of SADC speaking against these sanctions, and the AU speaking against these sanctions, while some of our own Zimbabweans are calling for the very same sanctions. It becomes counterproductive for Africa to want to unite with Zimbabwe if we as Zimbabweans are not united. This is why this initiative, Zimbabweans Unite Against US Sanctions, is the very first step in us fighting these sanctions. We need to unite as Zimbabweans. We need to love our nation as Zimbabweans. We need to identify these sanctions as warfare, and we need to identify ourselves as citizens having the first responsibility to fight any nation or any enemy against the nation of Zimbabwe. And this is why it is important now that our government begins to take the issue of sanctions as important by educating our students, educating the nation about these sanctions. Our government takes steps to call a national emergency against these sanctions so that the nation knows that the nation is at war and we need to unite against this war. The fight against sanctions does not start with trying to remove sanctions. It does not start with begging the Americans to remove their sanctions. It starts with us as Zimbabweans organizing ourselves to mitigate the effects of these sanctions, uniting ourselves to be able to first of all come together as a people, to love our nation, to identify our enemy, and to begin to fight these sanctions by being productive, producing our own food, being self-sufficient. And that is going to require us to look after our seeds so that we do not buy seeds from companies that belong to the same countries that are sanctioning us. Keeping and taking care of our organic seeds, ensuring that you use organic fertilizers so we stop importing fertilizers to bring self-sufficiency back to our people. One of the major reasons why Zimbabwe is losing its food self-sufficiency is, first of all, yes, the drought, but the sanctions are playing a part in the aspect that our farmers are being forced to buy seeds every single season. They need to use fertilizers and chemicals that are imported, which is why even the Command Agriculture lost a lot of money because of importing fertilizers. We need to stop importing fertilizers. We need our farmers stopping from buying seeds by going back to our organic seeds, our traditional seeds, and intercropping and utilizing organic fertilizers that are going to stop us from being reliant on importing from the same countries that have sanctions on us. We have to start producing our own fuels. Ethanol needs to become a part and parcel of how we produce our own fuels. We need to become less dependent on the countries that are sanctioning us. And when we produce, we need to rely on trading with other Africans, giving our food and products to other Africans, processing our own agricultural produce as the base of our economy to take us forward. From there, As Zimbabweans, we need to grow the confidence that we have the capacity to grow ourselves. We have the capacity to produce whatever we want and the solutions to our problems. And we have the money, the resources in the diaspora, looking at how much we bring into Zimbabwe every year, looking at how much we're saving. 89% of our savings are saved outside Zimbabwe. We have the capacity to bring up our own investment, home-biased investment, to grow and provide for every need that we have in Zimbabwe. This is going to require collaboration, self-belief, confidence in ourselves. And if we can achieve that, we can mitigate sanctions. If we can achieve that, we can grow our country. We can create jobs in our country. We can be food self-sufficient again in our country. We can begin to become manufacturers utilizing the best education in Africa that we have to produce for our needs and the needs of other African countries. We need to open up Zimbabwe to other Africans, to other Africans in the diaspora. African American investment. They must come and take the resources in our country. We must stop looking at Europeans as investors and yet not looking at our own Africans as investors. We need to start looking at African Americans, attracting them to come, bring their paper money to invest in our resources to build true wealth. But that starts with us believing in our own country for us to market our own country, believing in ourselves and being united in ourselves to open up our country for other Africans to come and make wealth. They say that Zimbabwe has got some of the biggest gold reserves in the world, lithium reserves in the world, and cobalt, all resources that will be needed in the future economy. We've got gas, we've got oil. We need to sell that to the world, but we do that as a united nation. We need unity. No MDC, no Ndebele, no Shona, no Nambia, but Zimbabweans. Zimbabweans united in their own common interest. We cannot be a people that have differences and then intend to sell the heritage of our nation, the inheritance of our children, because of our differences, yet we've got more commonalities than the differences that we have. This is why this institution, Zimbabweans United Against U.S. Sanctions, a metaphor of U.S. sanctions being neocolonialism, is standing up. We want to go out into our communities to educate our people, to go on a roadshow to educate our people about how to love ourselves once again, how to believe in ourselves once again, how to unite, how to invest together, how to save our seeds, how to organize our agriculture the way it used to be. If we produce food that is organic, we can be able to have a healthier nation. If we have a healthier nation, we need less medicines. When we have less medicines, we import less. When we import less fertilizers, we save more foreign currency for other things. We save more foreign currency for production. When we come together and we do what is called crowdfunding, we can crowdfund, collaborate, or cooperate into producing boreholes in our communities so that we can be able to mitigate the climate change. We are able, we are capable. That is why I've created an organization that is going to have Zimbabweans rely on Zimbabweans to be able to end these sanctions, to mitigate these sanctions, to unite as a people and help Africa to unite. That is the future of Zimbabwe. I refuse to be a member of the lost generation. I am a member of a generation that's going to leave an impact in this country, and so are you. Let's fight against these sanctions. Our differences are less important to our common interest, our common will, and our commonality.